Why no one wants to live in Canada. On October 19, 2015, a milestone in Canadian history was reached, a night of election where the entire country looked forward to change with hope. Canadians' discontent had peaked, and they turned out to vote en masse, yearning for a brighter future. The result? Justin Trudeau won, ascending to the position of Prime Minister with strong promises.
It's time for a change in this country, my friends, a real change.
Yet profound message. A new, prosperous, opportunity-filled Canada would be built. At that time, Canadians were full of enthusiasm, ready to believe in a radiant future, with the Canadian dream seemingly within reach. Promises of more housing, improved living conditions, and a golden age for Canada spread optimism. However, fast forward to today, the dream has turned into a nightmare. Housing prices have skyrocketed at record speed, and food banks are now having to turn away struggling citizens. Even more surprising, immigrants, who once saw Canada as a land of promise, are now leaving in record numbers. The Canadian dream is no longer one of hope, but one of deep disappointment. If you ask anyone in Canada today, the majority will say they feel hopeless about their future. A generation that once dreamed of owning a home in a safe neighborhood to raise their children is now swept up in the uncontrollable surge of housing prices. To buy an average home in Canada, a family needs to earn about $170,000 a year, and in places like Vancouver, that number jumps to a staggering $360,000. With the median household income only around $70,000, the dream of home ownership has become nothing more than a distant fantasy for most Canadians. In reality, most non-homeowners in Canada have completely given up hope. What caused them to abandon a dream that once seemed so attainable? Decades ago, owning a home in Canada was nowhere near as difficult as it is today. But with home prices outpacing wages, people have no choice but to accept the harsh reality. The problem isn't just about buying a home. Even renting has become a significant challenge for Canadians. Years of underbuilding, strong opposition from the Not In My Backyard, NIMBY movement, population growth, and bureaucratic red tape have led to far fewer rental units than needed. Across Canada, the vacancy rate for rentals is only 1.5%, a historic low. People are competing for every available space, with hundreds of applications for every rental listing. Besides housing prices, housing affordability is a result of a complex web of policies at both federal and local levels. One of the key factors driving the current housing crisis is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's immigration policy. Since 2016, Canada has welcomed nearly 3 million immigrants, a record number 40% higher than in previous decades. Even more notably, there are now over 1 million international students living in Canada. This rapid population growth in such a short time has put immense pressure on an already strained housing market. It follows a basic economic rule. When demand surges and supply cannot keep up, prices are bound to skyrocket. Immigrants often seek affordable housing, inadvertently creating uneven competition with average Canadians, particularly young people hoping to buy their first home. A prime example is students at the University of British Columbia, UBC, who can no longer find affordable accommodation. Some students are even forced to live in trucks and parking lots to save on costs.
I have to wait, I guess, more than a year to get a housing on campus in UBC.
The shortage of available housing has driven many students to accept subpar living conditions, with some even flying from other cities because renting there is cheaper. But immigration is only part of the story. The reality is that Canada has not invested enough in housing construction for decades. According to CIBC, Canada needs to build an additional 5 million homes by 2030 to ensure housing affordability, but experts agree that this goal is unachievable. Additionally, local governments are often unwilling to invest in new housing developments. This stems from a NIMBY mindset, Where residents oppose new housing projects out of fear, they will decrease property values. The process of obtaining building permits is also highly complicated, delaying or cancelling most major projects. Elected officials are fully aware of this, but refuse to push for housing development for fear of losing votes in elections. Furthermore, each city and province imposes high land development taxes and fees, which significantly increase construction costs. In some cities, these taxes can make up 20% of a home's cost, and ultimately, it's the consumer who bears this burden. It doesn't stop there. Administrative costs and taxes continue to rise because the government is growing faster than the population. For example, from 2020 to 2023, the British Columbia government expanded by 23%, while the private sector grew by only 1%. This forces the government to collect more taxes from citizens, creating a vicious cycle of rising housing and tax costs. Moreover, foreign investment plays a significant role in driving up real estate prices. Canada is an attractive destination for foreign investors and is even one of the easiest places in the OECD to launder money. In British Columbia, a money laundering scandal has become a hot topic, with reports revealing that large sums of illicit funds have been funneled into real estate in Vancouver and Toronto. What has the government done to address this? Almost nothing. Money laundering remains as easy as ever. As a result, Canadians not only face exorbitant housing prices, but also increasingly difficult day-to-day living. The federal government has implemented a carbon tax with the goal of reducing emissions and encouraging environmental protection initiatives. On paper, this sounds positive, but the reality is far from it. This policy has driven gas and heating costs to record highs. Although the government promises tax rebates, and many claim they will benefit from the carbon tax, the Parliamentary Budget Office paints a different picture. When considering the economic impacts, people are actually worse off. Canadians now spend more on fuel than any other G7 country, leading to strong backlash. Even members of the Liberal Party have spoken out as complaints from constituents grow, especially in the Atlantic provinces, where people feel they can no longer endure the burden of the carbon tax. However, the story doesn't stop at the carbon tax. Prices in many other industries across Canada are also rising due to government intervention. Take telecommunications, for example, one of the most expensive industries in the world. Ask anyone in Canada if they're paying too much for phone and internet services, and the answer will undoubtedly be yes. While people in other countries can access telecom services at reasonable prices, Canadians are paying 7 times more than Australians and even 1,000 times more than people in Finland. Another significant event was Rogers' acquisition of Shaw, 2 of Canada's largest telecommunications giants. In most other countries, an anti-competitive deal like this would be blocked immediately. But in Canada, major corporations hold so much power that they can push through such agreements without much opposition. It's not just the telecom sector. The Canadian banking industry faces similar issues. Strict regulations make it nearly impossible to establish new banks, leading to a lack of competition. Canadians are paying significantly higher banking fees compared to other countries, with each person paying an average of $250 more per year than people in the UK or Australia. The lack of competition in key industries doesn't just affect your police wallets, it also has consequences for economic productivity. Since 2019, Canada has seen a decline in productivity, while the US has grown by 6%. This not only leads to stagnant wages, but also lowers Canadians' quality of life. Part of the reason for this decline is that companies are choosing not to invest in Canada, instead opting for countries with higher returns and more favorable policies. The energy sector is also suffering from government interference. Since 2014, investment in energy has decreased by nearly $60 billion per year, partly due to federal pricing regulations that have hurt the industry. Some may argue that oil and gas are a thing of the past, and Canada should focus on future industries. However, Since 2016, GDP from tech companies has only grown in line with inflation, meaning it hasn't grown at all. It's not just big businesses struggling. Canada is also experiencing a brain drain and startup migration. Every year, about 7% of Canadians move to the US in search of better opportunities. With higher wages, lower living costs, and a more dynamic business environment, it's clear that Canadians are heading to places where they can thrive and enjoy a better quality of life. So, why doesn't anyone want to live in Canada anymore? The dreams that once seemed so beautiful have gradually turned into disappointment. From the housing crisis and soaring living costs to government intervention and economic decline, all of these factors have made life harder for Canadians than ever before. Young people, families, and even immigrants all are losing hope for the future in a country once seen as an ideal destination. Canada was once a symbol of a good and stable life, but now many are seeking to leave and find new opportunities elsewhere. What will the future hold for the country if the government doesn't make the necessary reforms to save the situation? In the end, the question remains, can Canada change to restore the promised dream? Only time will tell. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more exciting content. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.